Did you have a nice weekend? Last Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the Constitution protects marriage for everyone, including same-sex couples. It's a decision we've been waiting decades for, and now finally, all of our work is actually still not quite done. So let's take a look at exactly what the Supreme Court ruled and what comes next. For the American Foundation for Equal Rights, I'm Matt Baum, and welcome to Marriage News Watch for June 29th, 2015. There are two huge wins in the Supreme Court decision. The first is that the Constitution guarantees equal protection when it comes to marriage. That means that states can no longer refuse to let LGBTs get married. The second is that every state has to recognize marriage licenses from every other state. So this isn't a win just for same-sex couples, and it's not a loss for anyone. When the court upholds the Constitution, expanding equality and justice, everybody wins. So now what? Everyone's still kind of figuring that out. Across the vast majority of the country, couples are getting married and having their existing marriages recognized, but we're probably going to see a few isolated pockets of resistance. For example, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said that clerks may be able to turn away same-sex couples. Texas officials also said that marriages shouldn't start yet, but a lot of local clerks were like, no, we're starting now, and began issuing licenses right away. Conflicts like that will probably keep popping up here and there for a little while. Missouri's looking at getting out of the marriage business altogether. North Carolina just passed a bill that lets officials deny licenses to all couples, gay and straight. If this sounds familiar, it's because something similar happened last century when the Supreme Court ordered an end to segregated schools. Back then, a lot of places just closed their schools altogether rather than integrate them. Kids literally had nowhere to go because officials preferred to deprive everyone of their rights rather than extend those rights to a minority. But that tactic didn't last. With integration, as with marriage, the Supreme Court's orders were very clear. Civil rights groups fought to have the schools reopen so the long, hard work of integration could move ahead, and over time, the same thing will happen with marriage. But it won't happen by itself. There will still be parts of the country where couples will have to fight for constitutionally guaranteed rights. We got the victory. Now we have to defend it. But now's also a good time to step back, reflect, celebrate, and thank all the people who helped make history. This victory is due in large part to pioneers who stood up for equality in the 1970s, leaders like Andrew Sullivan and Evan Wolfson who expanded the conversation about marriage in the 80s, organizations like Lambda Legal and GLAAD who laid a foundation in the 90s, and then the growing chorus of voices in the 2000s from the ACLU to NCLR and HRC. But of course, it's not just organizations that made this happen. Whether you marched in a parade, or held a sign, or just talked to your family about why marriage matters, this win is also thanks to you. Now, you might be wondering what this means for this show, Marriage News Watch. Well, there's still going to be marriage news to report, although it's going to be a very different story from what it was before. We're heading into a new world, and while there's no telling exactly what's going to happen next, it's definitely going to be exciting. Thanks again so much for liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing to Marriage News Watch. Keep in touch, and we'll see you next week.